Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for this edition of Shop Talk. Today, I've invited a panel of folks in the field. So we've been experiencing an interesting year, to say the least. And I figured the best opportunity for us to really share some insights and to think about, what can we do for the rest of the year? What are other people doing for the holiday season? And let's just investigate. Am I doing things right? How are other people experiencing the challenges? And I find that sharing questions, sharing answers, and just learning from others is one of the best ways that we create community, but we also can learn that we're not in it alone. And so I've been reaching out to folks through NRPA Connect and been having the opportunity to have some conversations with people over the phone, over Zoom. And so I've invited some folks to share their experience today and we're going to kind of look at, what are some of the highlights from 2020? What are some of the learning points that we can pull away? And what are some of the next steps that we're going to push forward with? And so our discussion is going to highlight on our panel's operational plans for this holiday season, investigate some of the efforts that are left for the rest of the year, but also looking at what does 2021 look like on the horizon. And to really give you a good perspective, since our audience is from around the US as well, I've decided to try to get some folks from different regions of the country. And so over here on the East Coast, I've invited Brendan Lederer, who is the Assistant Director of Berks County, who's here in Pennsylvania. He's at their Parks and Rec department. I've also reached out to James Hurst, who is the Outdoor Recreation Manager in Palm Coast down in Florida. I've had the fortunate to speak with someone up in the colder regions, and that's Brent Kath. He's the Assistant Director of Asset Management in Minneapolis Parks and Recreation. And also down in Texas, we have Joel McKnight, who is the Assistant Parks and Recreation Director at the city of El Paso. And so what I'd like to first ask everyone is, 2020 has been a very interesting year, and each of you have gone through and had different kinds of impacts that it may have been hitting you, whether you're very close to a metropolis area and you've been seeing everybody get out of the cities, and maybe like Brendan, you're in a little suburban area, but you may have seen a massive uptick in folks and visiting your facilities that are from out of the area, and that's impacting you in certain ways. Some of us, like James, is closer to the hurricane weather. And Joel, you may be getting hit with that a little bit too, but I know watching the news, you have a very big impact on COVID hitting your area. And Brent, you had some civil unrest going on throughout the summer, and then you have some severe winters and things that you deal with over time. And so it'd be very interesting to look at everyone's plans for the future and just how we may be dealing with different approaches to things. So how about if we start on the East Coast, and let's ask Brendan to start off.
Sure, thank you. We're about a county that's about 400,000 in population, over about 860 some square miles, about an hour outside of Philadelphia. We're on the smaller end. We have 9 parks, a little over 1,000 acres of properties that we take care of. And for us, initially, all our programming for the parks area has been shut off from the beginning of COVID. That our maintenance division actually was cut by 40% initially with some of the issues with COVID. So, well, we ran the first part of the year in a deficit with manpower, and then we found that there's been a really high increase, almost a 3 times increase in visitation, when it was recommended that individuals go outside, go to your parks, do some things to get out of the buildings and do some stuff. So that we had a really large increase with our visitation in the parks. And that gave us the ammunition to say we need our full-time people back, even brought some of our part-time people back to be able to handle the increase in the visitation that we have there, even though we don't have our programming happening. And I know that there's a question probably later, what is any of the benefits that we could see with COVID? And I tell you what, for us, it was actually very pleasing to see the increase in visitation. It was nice to see people that may have not been able to get out to experience something new. And it's just wonderful to see like a family come through. You have grandparents bringing grandchildren and things like that to the park. So if there is anything positive with the scenario that's going on, is we enjoyed having the increase in people with us in the Parks Department.
James, how about you down in the fun in the sun?
Yeah. Well, it's 70 degrees down here, nice and sunny with no clouds. So sorry for all those people up north, Brent. Sorry, mate. Yeah, we kind of, when COVID hit, we never really stopped. We noticed that majority of our residents were still using the trails. We did close down our parks, but they were still using our trails. We did close our trailheads, but there were ways people were getting onto our trails and using them. So we kind of really didn't shut down our maintenance side of Parks and Recreation. Everything else shut down. So we continue to give the best standard of care we can for our parks. We're a city of about 90,000 people, and we're located between Daytona and St. Augustine. And kind of what we saw as a benefit was we got some of the projects that we couldn't get done, we got them done, such as pressure washing. We get a lot of moss and algae growing on our boardwalks, and we have to pressure wash them at least a couple times a year. And so one of ours is quite a big boardwalk that we got the pressure wash during COVID. So we really didn't see much of on the maintenance side. We kept going. Our full-time staff came on. One of the disadvantages is that we were in the middle of hiring 2 more people, but we got onto a hiring freeze. So now we have 12 parks and 123 miles of trails, and we only have 10 guys doing those. So it's right now we have 2 guys hitting 6 parks, 3 hitting the other 6, and then we have 2 guys doing bathrooms and 3 guys at just one specific park that council's very, very adamant that it keeps clean. So we're running on bare bones right now. We're making it happen. So that was probably one of the hardest things that we had to deal with, is that we were planning on more people to come to do a better standard of care, but now we're running on bare bones. So, but we're getting through it.
Joel, you've shared your standard of care document with me, and we've discussed, how you've kind of managed expectations along that way. Are there some other insights that you can share along what, COVID has brought out?
I think for some clarification for the others in the meeting, our city manager in January did a lot of reorganization in the city. And the reason that Brian and I connected is because we were actually reorganized where park maintenance was moved over to our streets and maintenance department. And this is the second time since I've been my 13 years with the city that we've been moved over to more of a public works department. And so for us, the benefit, we already knew how to react going there. But for us, the benefit immediately is the fact that our director and focus of our department is maintenance. And so quite frankly, we don't become the petty cash for rec programs that aren't done right and other things like that. We can focus on major maintenance events better, and we get to leverage, of course, everything else that is part of the streets and maintenance department, because in this department now we've got park maintenance, facility maintenance, streets, and a lot of contract maintenance, as well as other things that are offshoots of all of that. So it really, it puts us into a better situation. Our communication is good with our recreation department and personnel. And I already had a good relationship with the person that they eventually appointed permanently as the director of recreation and museums, because they combined our museums with our recreation because of the tie-ins there as well. For us with COVID, the real thing has been, much like what others have said, we've been able to concentrate more on really just taking care of what we've got rather than trying to come up with a bunch of crazy projects each year to satisfy elected officials, quite frankly. This year, when we went through our first shutdown, we had a stay-at-home order that lasted about 30 days, roughly, to where the only things in our park system that were open was trails. Yeah, nothing else. And then we had a slow reopening, if you will. We had given a proposal for a lot more of a phased opening, but this one was still doable for us. Right now, we've got our parks open for passive use, if you will, as long as, and the orders from our county health, as long as they have 10 people or less in groups, their social distancing, etc. Our playgrounds are open, and we've got, through the CARES Act, we've got some extra people that are temporary, but still extra people to help on not sanitizing, but just cleaning the playgrounds. And we've made it clear to people that we're not sanitizing, that we don't have the manpower to sanitize, plus it's an impossible task because as soon as the first child goes down the slide, it's not sanitized anymore. And so we've made them understand that with proper signage that we vetted through our legal and other things to that nature. And a lot of it's based on everything that NRPA had available, plus some of our local health authority. For us, probably the biggest hiccup, if you could want to call it that, has been that, much like anyone else, we've had probably 10 to up to 20% of our budget held or frozen during last year, and we're in a new fiscal year now, and our budget's the same as when we ended, so we haven't gotten any of those monies restored. I think right now, people are telling us, "Oh, your fields look great." Well, yeah, we don't have anybody out there tearing them up. So that's the other thing. We're really able to throw hard evidence out there to some of our quote unquote experts out that think that they know better on anything else, whether it be a coach or an elected official, that the reason that everything looks good is it's not getting the traffic. For us, our department is slowly starting to be affected a little bit by the by COVID positive tests, and so we've had to, because we're slowly going into dormancy. El Paso's in the high desert on the far west end of Texas, and so we're going into dormancy right now. And so we've been able to supplement where, say, some of our other divisions in this department, facilities maintenance, street maintenance, have had if you want to call it casualties, or just been hit hard because of positive tests. We've been able to supplement them. And of course, by doing so, it really builds goodwill with those divisions, since we're brand new to this department. I think the other thing is it's just brought a lot of people to common sense modes rather than wanting everything for nothing still. They all realize, because their own businesses have been affected by revenues, that the city's the same way. And so it's brought a little bit of realism there. Our performance, we've got KPIs and things to that nature, but it's really, everything has been thrown up in the air, and it's a new year to really evaluate everything all over again, because there's no way we're going to go back to the old normal.
Good points. Brent, is there anything that you can echo along there? And also maybe lead into our another question, since it is coming into your busier season. I know for the ice rinks are going to start coming in, and you're going to start hitting some of those seasonal aspects of things. So is it still game on and everything's moving forward, or have there been big adjustments because of COVID and for other reasons this year?
Yeah, so I mean, I can certainly echo everything that you guys are saying here in Minneapolis. And, we kicked off, as Brian said, with some civil unrest in Minneapolis here with the murder of George Floyd. That really started our summer off in a difficult spot, to say the least. A lot of vandalism, a lot of just things that our staff isn't used to dealing with. And so we started off, dealing with a lot of that. And then COVID really hit hard, I think, not too shortly after. We've had to adjust a lot of things. And so our parks really increased in usership. We ended up closing down, not closing down our trails, but we closed down some of our parkways. So our parkways are also used by vehicles in the Minneapolis park system, go around our chain of lakes areas, sometimes along our river roads too. We're really fortunate in Minneapolis to be surrounded by a number of bodies of water, including some of the best fishing in Minnesota for muskies, northerns, and walleyes at Lake Bedamakaska. But then also along the Mississippi River, we have some great views and bluff areas along there. And so to start COVID off, in order to increase trail space, we already have a walking and biking trail space along most of these areas, which we generally call the Grand Rounds. We opened up our parkways too, that vehicles usually travel on. We close those down to pedestrians to increase the amount of people that can be out enjoying the park space. And so that was quite the undertaking, because obviously you have a number of businesses, neighborhoods, residential spaces that encompass these parkways as well. And so there is a lot of challenges that go along with that. But, we're still experiencing quite a bit of use in our parks despite the cold weather. We got snow on the ground out here. A lot of it's melted, but it's between, upper 20s to low 40s most of the time here. But yeah, we're gearing up for our winter season now. And so we're trying to find ways to create more space in our parks, right? People need to get out of the house because they're not leaving for work most of the time. Most people are working from homes. And so they're still finding refuge in our parks. And so we're introducing, trying to get, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the term like fat biking, bikes that have, but 4-inch tires on them basically. And so introducing more of that into our parks. We already have a number of single track trails within our park system, but we have other groomed areas that we're introducing to our parks. We're trying to do a little bit more research and information on sledding hills as well. So calling those out, GISing those, similar to our ice rink. So switching gears back to ice rinks, and now at this point we're actually scaling back because of some of the things that you guys had talked about in regards to people, COVID, budget constraints. We don't have as many people to do all this stuff. So last year, years prior, we had 49 skating rinks in our park system, one refrigerated, which we didn't do much maintenance on other than remove snow. But this year, similar to our pool season, we decreased the amount of rinks we're using this year. So we're down to 39 rinks this year. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Oh yeah, so our warming houses too. That's a huge, I keep using the word like challenge or opportunity, right? I mean, it's a problem. I'm telling you guys, it's 20 degrees outside. Everyone's like, oh, that's cold. Well, that's just the start of it up here in Minnesota, to be honest with you guys. Like usually it's like 0, like 10 degrees, like when it gets like 15 degrees, people literally are outside skating and skiing, thinking that the weather is like really nice, to be honest with you. But when you slow down, you're not moving, you're not skating, you're not skiing. Yeah, it's obviously cold. And so people want these warming houses, but we just don't know. I don't know a safe way to cram 50 people into a 13 by 25 trailer and still, be socially distant or not share the same breath after you just get off the ice skating or skiing with everyone else. So it's a lame attempt, I guess, but we're putting picnic tables out or trying to, put, boot benches, boot boxes outside. We have like 6 different service areas. We have a regional park area, north, northeast, southwest. Basically it's broke up into quadrants or whatever. And so like equitably wise, we're just putting 2 warming rooms in each of those spaces. And just like I'm sure the rest of you guys, putting a capacity on those spaces and having them open only during certain times. And then, doing our cleaning. And so I think for us, like we've tried to do a better job of cleaning, to say the least, I guess, but try to like understand a little bit more about what other people are doing. And so we've found these like fogger machines. I don't have an example, but there's these fogger machines that people have been using. And so we just started using them like a couple weeks ago in areas where we know COVID has been present. And so there's 2 different types that we have here. One that literally takes like 2 minutes to kill any of the virus, and you're in and out of it. The other one I think takes 10 minutes or something like that. And so I think those machines will play a pretty big role in these warming houses that we have. But it also helps our staff out quite a bit too, knowing that we have that sort of technology. I got, for this winter, I have about 104 park keepers, 103 park keepers, about 20 crew leaders working. That's just our maintenance staff, and that's some more drivers, mechanics, and stuff like that. But just like all of us, it's scary to be out there providing this service. They're really like frontline workers, right? They're dealing with the public every single day, and so that's consumed a majority of my time, honestly, is trying to find ways to keep my team safe, keep them out of harm's way, create calling tree lists in coordination with our safety coordinator when there is an infection, when there is a case. How do we get the information to the right people, and how do we keep people out of the buildings if that has happened, that sort of thing. That's been my biggest challenge, to try to keep everyone on an even keel, if you will, and understanding what we're trying to provide as they see an increase in homelessness in our parks, as they see increased use in our parks, as we go through civil unrest. One of my bosses played a big role in the cleanup of Katrina when it came through. And I'm not making light of Katrina by any means, but he says that this has been more challenging with civil unrest, COVID, trying to manage our city through all of these different things than it was to clean up a lot of the aftermath of a hurricane such as Katrina. And so I feel for everybody out there, everybody that's on this call, you're on here for a reason, to try to figure out, see what everybody else is doing, try to get a sane mindset, that we're all on the same page and not bang your head against the wall too much. I think we could all go down a little bit of a rabbit hole here and explain what we're going on. And there's a lot of topics. And so I'd be willing to continue this conversation at a different time, because we're not going to be able to cover everything here in this hour for sure. But, I can share my information. We can share sob stories or ways to move forward, whatever it is, whatever gets us through the day, week, and the rest of 2020 here to, make it as positive as possible. So.
Well, and that's a great transition, actually, staying on the the appreciative side of things. And that, what are some of the best practices you have been utilizing to keep morale up, to ensure that you're checking in with your staff, to keep them engaged, even if they have gone, maybe they've been furloughed? Or what kind of methodologies have each of you taken to ensure you're just checking in and making sure that people feel that they're cared about?
Well, for us, we haven't really had to furlough any maintenance folks because of the department we're in. We're considered essential, and so we haven't had to furlough anyone, and that in its own right helped with a lot of attitude and morale, if you will, from the get-go, because people, they saw what happened to folks in other departments. But our director is a very people-oriented, and he makes an effort, and has until our numbers just went crazy to where we really were restricted, to go out and see folks at their work area and things to that nature. And that right there in its own right, of course, makes a big difference with the guys in the field that are out there on the front line every day. The other thing we've done is we've been, during this whole process, since about April, we've really worked hard to try to be understanding. And if we can say yes to a request when it comes to flexing a schedule, things of that nature, we've done it. Now, we've explained to people at times we can't, because we still have to have an X percentage of folks there to do the basic mission, even though that's changed. But our folks have always taken have always taken a lot of pride in what they're doing, but they see, and they see the importance of what they're doing right now. Because in El Paso, about 15 to 20 years ago, because of being in the high desert, the water company more or less gave buyout grants to homeowners, to where if they would convert their front yards to xeriscaping, and that back then it was zero-scaping instead of xeriscaping, it made the park system even more important to the people because of it being the only green space. And so we're kind of unique in that aspect, especially to most folks in the state of Texas, because we are in an arid region, and others that have the rainfall, they don't see it the same way. So our folks, the morale has been there. It's just feeling the burden of the community, not necessarily about the job, but about what's going on with the community is what's really taking its toll now, because it's lasted almost a full year for us, just like everyone else.
So BK, I can offer some stuff as well too. I think it's very important with the morale for the employees to be there with them, actually go out and ask, and not ask them to do anything we wouldn't do ourselves, to be in amongst it with them. Something as simple as making sure they're okay in the morning, checking in on them personally, making sure they got the right PPE for things and the supplies, listening to them if they have a concern. I tell you what, we have some of our best ideas come from the guys shooting off the hip in the morning and stuff at the morning meetings, to saying, hey, how about we try this? And I tell you, some of the most unconventional things have come up and actually worked well for us. And that goes a long way with keeping our manpower going. When you tell someone they have to go out for the day and they're sanitizing restrooms and facilities where there could have been COVID positive people, that's not the top on their list to be able to do that. But to remind them how important it is that we're a public service group in that aspect, to that if we don't do it, no one else will do it. And we have to give a safe place to the public. And that goes a long way with the public, to make sure they've got the proper signs and let them know that we're cleaning the facility and it's sanitized every day. And we appreciate them being there, and to thank you and to give them their space, and for the public to see our employees wearing the proper PPE and stuff and engaging them in times like this is very important. And that goes a long way with keeping good relationships in-house and also with the public.
Yeah, we did as a city in general, we did kind of like post, as you said, Brandon, about what they were doing, how much good they're doing for the community, things like that. And then we also, it might not work for most places, but for us, we kind of did like a drive-through like lunchtime for our stuff. They'd come in to our community center, pick up. We got some like barbecue from a vendor just who needed, and it helped the vendor as well. We paid the vendor. They came in and they just kind of did a little bit of a drive-through pickup during lunch, and then went back out to where they were and ate their lunch. So that helped us a lot. And as along with Joel, I think it helped us out that we didn't really release anyone. We kept full-time people here at all times, but during that time when they were worried about what's going to happen with their job, it was going out there reassuring them, you know, you guys are essential. You are essential employees. So if you do need to go home with the kids because of school or something, we kind of worked around that and we worked with them that way. So that's how we kind of kept our morale going.
Great examples. Yeah, especially if you can engage your local businesses and things in that too, because then you get more buy-in from your community and it creates that sense of ownership as well. So
there
yes,
was
sir.
There was on the chat, there was a question. I believe Daniel Lawson, had a question there.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up there.
Okay,
so,
go ahead.
and I was going to lead into all of us because I was directed at you, but in a sense, we have been noticing upticks in usage. We've been seeing numbers increase, but how are we keeping track of those things? Because as I've had a long conversation with Joel about data, it's not all of us have, you know, the work order management systems and trail counters and those kind of things. But at the same time, we need data to take our numbers to the powers that be, to the public officials and say, hey, we need our staff. We need more money. We need to keep floating if you want your B+, A- report card on your parks. You know, how do you keep track of, you know, what costs are being taken in, and then how do you communicate that to your officials? Joel, do you want to start? Oh, go ahead, Brett.
Go ahead.
I'll say, you know, I wish we had a better way to do it, so I'll be learning here too. But what we've been doing is basically tracking who's here, like in regards to staff. And so if there's been a reduction in staff for maintenance, we've you know, asked that, you know, we scale back some of our programming or some of the amenities that we have available. So we have, you know, if we have certain, you know, amount of staff that's typically not showing up, or, you know, during the last, I think we're in like month eight of this, you know, COVID for Minneapolis right now. We've been in a hiring freeze the entire time. So during that hiring freeze, we've lost, you know, whether it's retirements or firing, you know, we've just lost staff, right? And so as that number goes down, I say, hey, we're down 10% staff. And so there needs to be a reduction in services rendered. And so like, that's how we look at some of our the number of pools available, number of ice rinks available. Just we just don't have enough people to go around. But I'll be listening here because I'd love to hear a way to get some more data around, you know, what the service levels can be. So I'll listen now.
Well, what we've done and what I've talked to Brian about in the past is about 5 years ago, we got a new city manager and he's still here. And he is of the newer breed that if you don't have data, don't even try to talk to him about it. And the fact that he wants to have the data to support when he goes in and talks to the elected officials. And so it took for me, it wasn't a hard adjustment, because for me, I've always told my staff, don't tell me how busy you are. Tell me what you've gotten done, and then we'll talk about where the needs are. And then I've also told them, well, don't tell me you need more people. Let's go through time motion studies. Let's take a look and see what your windshield time is. Let's look at those things. And so that's what we started doing from the get-go, because there again, I'm more of that same mindset. I'm also an LSS green belt. So, I'd look at these guys and I say, I can't go to bat for you at budget time and stand there at the dais and tell them that my guys think they need more folks to help. I've got to be able to show them information so that I can beat them down with data. And in other words, choke them with their own words when they finally see it. And so we started back then, really about every 2 years, we go through and do time motion studies with our irrigation techs, because that's the most critical job out here for water in the desert. And, right now, because we only have 4 main corrals throughout the whole city, and El Paso is 250 square miles big. Well, almost the whole county is the city. And we've got over 300 parks spread over that area, but we only have 4 primary corrals. Now we have some satellite areas out in places, whether it be at a sports park where they're dedicated staff there, or even satellite for storage and things to keep you from running back and forth all the time. But that's why we've lived by time motion when it comes to the irrigators, since everybody here in El Paso respects the fact that that's probably the most important for us because of that natural resource. And once they opened up some new roadways, doing loops and things, we were able to go through and find efficiencies in how we even divided the boundaries between those 4 corrals for access. Right now, we're spending about anywhere from 2 3/4 hours to up to 3.5 hours a day behind the windshield when it comes to things. And so I've been beating our folks down with that. And if COVID hadn't to come around, we would probably be getting a 5th corral to divide everything out better between this year and the next fiscal year. But with COVID, we're in the same thing we were. So, we've set minimum standards for where our areas need to be, whether it be turf grass based on the time of year, the amount of irrigation that goes out, everything to that nature. Then the other thing we did was when we went through CAPRA accreditation back in 2017 and 18, it made us look at it to where we knew we didn't have the budget to do everything equal. Nobody does. If you do, I want your job. But we went through and we did that. And so one of the things that came out of it was we built our levels of service on and put our parks all under tiers. We've got 5 different categories for our parks, all the way from a tier 1/cat 1, which is like the crown jewels of what we have and our designated game fields, all the way to a cat 5, which are trailheads. And here in the desert, it may have like a solar powered charging table, a bike repair stand, things to that nature, but it's minimal. And so that's the gamut we run there. And we have most of our parks that are only seen in either bi-weekly or weekly, once each during that time frame. We've only got about 20% of our parks that get seen multiple times a week because of the resources. And we presented all that to council and got them buying in on it. Now, some of them right now that are going through elections this last year probably didn't like it at that time, but they didn't have a better answer either. And so those are the things that we've put in place. And I know that other folks have the same things in place, but that's what we've done to do that, to get it. Now, we're still educating the public on, if you really want this more, we're going to have to go to more of a user-based fee for these areas, rather than it being just the general tax road. And so, you know, it's every day's a new learning curve for us. And you look for collaborations and partnerships. Instead of having Adopt a Park, we have what we call our park partners. And that's a true legal agreement between us and usually a neighborhood association. And we have it lasting. It goes for 2 years with a possible extension, 2 extensions of 1 year. But we only do it for those short to midterm, if you will, whatever your nomenclature is. We only do it that way so that it forces both us and that partner to come back to the table, because points of contacts change and things change within our industry on what is the up and coming thing. So it forces you to do that and rework that agreement. And through our park partnerships, we have quite a few collaborations to where people are saying, hey, we want to take on the maintenance of these picnic tables and this, so that it's better for everybody. And that's another thing that's really come out of COVID, to be honest with you, because prior to COVID and the revenues situations for private and for us, they wouldn't have come to it, but they came to us after COVID with those ideas themselves.
I think I could add a little bit, probably for us to be able, I know the question was sort of, and the chat was about getting some of the manpower back when you had some initial cuts. For us, it was pretty kind of simple and old school. We have counters and we have that show our daily attendance. And when we were asked to cut by 40%, we were still asked to keep the parks running at 100%. And that was with no volunteers, no volunteer groups. It was no part-time employees. And then you go and add the higher level of standards that we need to do because of COVID. We need to go in and sanitize and have employees go and take care of that with the cleaning. We had an increase in trash. We had to add extra people because we have such an influx of people using the parks department that we have to now add extra time and manpower and resources to be able to get the trash. So for us, it was just going to our leaders and saying, you're asking us to run at 100% with a 60% workforce and all our auxiliary employees not here and volunteers not here. And unfortunately, they actually said, well, you know, carry on the way you're going. And then after a little while, they're starting to see some of the results. The fields weren't getting done as much. We prioritized everything. We prioritized it with as far as the safety of the public and our employees first, and moved on down the road, just like you had said with your different levels of priority in different parks that you have, from a crown jewel down to a trailhead. Same sort of thing with us. And so they started to have some of the public notice some of the things not getting done to our normal standards. And so it went from us just actually conveying this information and requesting the information, requesting new employees, to having some public raise some questions about the neglect with some of the parks. And there was even a time when there was a local news station that just happened to be in the park, and some other people in some of the higher offices saw some of those things and raised questions. Well, why aren't we doing this? Where is our procedure to be able to do this? And so because of people becoming more aware, other than just us making requests, I believe was the trigger that said, what do you need? How can you get back on track? And what can we do? And we brought back our full-time employees to 100%, and actually brought in some part-timers for extra help to be able to get that done. So kind of really old school and real simple in that respect. Nothing major as far as other data with that. We can show them that we had a 3 times increase during certain levels of the beginning part of COVID there. And so once we were able to have a good conversation, it kind of made sense and clicked and allowed them to give us back our manpower.
Now, I generated a tool, if you will, a spreadsheet that I shared with James, and maybe James can kind of say whether or not that was helpful in a sense. But the main goal behind that was to start calculating tool time. And so when you kind of look at, you know, manufacturing, and you look at other industries that also have maintenance, and when you think of kind of, even as Joel was mentioning, windshield time. And so basically, how much time is real work getting done, and then where is your gaps in between, and how can you be more efficient in the amount of tool time and uptime versus wasted time, and or what are people spending their time on? Is everyone just collecting trash all day? How can we, you know, diversify and divide the labor a little better? So maybe James, you can share your insights into, you know, directions or questions that you may have right now.
Yeah, we just started implementing that spreadsheet you sent over to me, Brian. It actually worked out really well. The supervisor and I, we were kind of doing what Joel was doing. We kind of had different tiers, and then we kind of came up with a level of service for each park. And we literally sat here for a couple of months figuring out how long does it take to pressure wash this? How long does it take to do this? How long does it take to do this? And really with no like guideline or anything. So it worked. We realized we are inefficient and by 7 people for all our parks and everything. But looking at your Excel sheet, it's working out really well. We give each truck and each employee one sheet, and they fill it out for us, and it goes back to the supervisor, and he's compiling that into one big data thing. So when we do need to, for next budget year in 2022, you know, this will help us when we talk to our director, request for more staff. So it's working out really well.
That's great to hear. Are there some other tools that either, you know, Brendan, Brent, Joel, what tools are you utilizing to try to capture some of that data? Is it just paper based? Is it a spreadsheet? Is it, you know, do you have a work order system that ties everything together in a database?
We've got a work order system. In the past, we were using one called MaintStar, all one word. But over the last 3 years, we've been migrating it into one called CityWorks, which I think is by Azteca Systems. And the reason we went to CityWorks is our streets department had used it for years and years. They already had GIS layers, everything else set up. So it was just a matter of us migrating our data to it. And this year, we're finally getting to where we're full force into CityWorks. And it allows us to, of course, when you have that software, to develop your own filters for your reports and everything else. But that's one of the things that I think is the most important. You know, we went through about 18 months ago, because everybody knows the importance of playgrounds. And we bought quite a few iPad minis so that we could do park inspections and playground inspections with those in hand instead of paper, then transfer and everything else. And so that's where we're heading as well. We used the iPad minis to locate, tag, however you want to call it, all of our assets. We did all of our playground equipment first, then going through and getting all of our irrigation heads, valves, everything tagged. And right now, as we go through a park, they're tagging other amenities, whether it be trees or tables or etc. And so my goal is by the end of 2021 to try to have all of our system or at least 90% of our system fully into that. And that'll, that way it'll lead us to the next step. Once we get to there, on our fixed hard assets, we'll put a barcode that our streets department uses the system on their street signs and everything else on there. So we can actually predict different failures of things. And fellas, I'm sorry, I've got another meeting in about 5 minutes that I've got to prep for. Brian, you're welcome to pass on my contact information. That's fine. It's not private. Anybody has any questions, comments, just wants to vent, call anytime.
Thank you, Joel.
Thank y'all.
Thanks so much.
Brendan, what sort of systems are you utilizing?
I'm gonna be a little embarrassed. We're absolutely old school. We're very small, so it is paper based. Actually, our most tech savvy is our tree inventory. I have thousands of trees inventory through an ArborScope program that we have through our Bartlett Tree Experts. So in that aspect, as far as work orders and looking at what trees need to get work in that aspect, we use that all the time for, and like as most of our team know that have the deciduous trees and ash trees as an example, emerald ash borers and stuff, it helps absolutely figure things out for us. It's got the maps, it's got all that data recording, how much manpower we put into it, and that's the most extensive kind of program that we have. But yeah, other stuff is just kind of old school. We just have it on paper. We have the stuff that has happened previously, and you know, it's this time of year. This is what we're doing. It takes this many guys to be able to do that. And so, yep, just that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah,
It
Brandon,
still works.
Sorry, Brian.
That's all right.
Brandon, we're in the same kind of boat. We're using paper right now, but we're starting to move towards Salesforce. We have a thing over here called PalmCoastNet, which is built through Salesforce, and eventually we'll have what Joel was talking about. But we've been paper I've been in this job just over a year, and previous 6 years before me, they've been using paper as well. So yeah, it's just we're pretty old school now, but we're starting to change that like pretty much this month. So.
Yeah, we're making the transition too. I mean, we've transitioned to a number of things. I think trees are probably one of the things we have GIS the most in Minneapolis as well. But we have a lot of other things, GIS too, whether it's pools or ice rinks. I use the GIS information to share. I forget what the program is, but I actually do a public facing to show whether the pool is opened or closed. Same with the ice rink. Has it been resurfaced? Is it good to go? That sort of thing. So we're getting more and more things GIS and integrating that into our system. Well, we use ViewWorks. I'm not sure if anyone else uses ViewWorks out there. That's our asset management tool, but we also use it for work orders too. And so we're a big system, I guess, to put it bluntly. And it's embarrassing how far behind we are. I've been here for about 3.5 years as well, and we're kind of starting to scratch the surface in regards to getting that data in there so we can really tie it back. Anyone, words of advice, I guess, for people who are trying to do a work order system, something like that. If you can get a work order system that ties into your payroll system, that's going to like change your life and be able to grab this data that we're talking about tremendously. Anytime you can tie back to dollars, right? That's huge. And so if you can create a standard process, tie it to an asset in the park, tie that asset to a payroll code, job code, whatever it is, and that job code is tied to your payroll system. I mean, it's just, and then you other guys are doing these park inspections, right? You throw a park inspection on that to see, are you really getting done what you're saying you're getting done with the amount of time you're spending on it, on paying for you? I think everyone's life is super easy, but like a lot of you guys, we're way behind on that. So we're trying to do that. And I have a pilot out right now with building rinks. I've just picked 6 rinks. And so we're trying to track all of the cost that goes into that, whether it's labor hours and materials, the resurfacing cost, the materials cost to have the rink going, tie it back to payroll somehow, some way, because ours don't talk to one another, unfortunately. But that's the key in what I've seen so far. You can tie that payroll back to the work order system, followed up by a quality check system process somehow. Your life's gonna be a lot easier, I think.
Well, and that makes a very good point for our last question here is thinking strategy. You know, if there's anything that we all need to be aware of, and I'm sure we already are, but you know, as we move forward into 2021, it really is going to be a crunch for budgets. It's going to be a crunch for time. And it's a matter of taking a unified approach and being organized and being very strategic. And Joel left a note in there is making sure that, you know, you're thinking about your administrative folks and the council and folks that are, you know, maybe a little bit more top down, but how can you align your operations and your priorities along with the outlined strategies and things? And so as we think 2021, you know, what are some of the biggest priorities that you have focusing for your operations next year? And what are either a change that you think you want to implement, or just at least a goal that you're going to work towards to make sure everything works out a little bit more efficiently and streamlined?
I guess I'll start with this one. One of our main priorities for looking into 2021 is actually tracking how much each park costs and how much each trail costs and how much each sport field costs to maintain throughout the year. In the past, that's never been done. It's always been, you know, oh, better hurry up, we only got 3 minutes. It's always just been, I need more guys. So then all of a sudden he, instead of getting 4, we only get 1. So we're really prioritizing on how much each park's cost, each park and trail costs, and on the maintenance side, but then we're also looking at how long we spend at each park as well, and each trail, and each sport field. So then this will help us justify for our 2021-22 budget that we can't go down anymore. We have to keep where we're at, or we're not going to have the standard of care that the citizens and the council want.
Brendan?
And I think for us, short term for 21 is just to continue to get through this crisis that we're in now. We have a lot of things on pause financially with capital projects and things like that. So short term, get through this, kind of see what happens. And even with some of our funding sources, we haven't seen an immediate impact with that, because even larger groups aren't quite sure how everything's going to shake out. We know it's going to be less. There's going to be problems with funding sources. That hasn't quite all shaken out yet, too. So we're looking at more short-term stuff, and then slowly be able to take bites out of some of the things and kind of get back in process of things that have been paused.
You want to round it out there, Brent? You're on mute.
We're in the same spot as all these guys, you know, trying to track, trying to get system and processes down, trying to see where, you know, the 40 hours is going each week, and report out on that to the beings that control the purse strings, basically. I think Joel said earlier in regards to the tiers of parks. I think that's important too. You know, not every single trash can, every single park building needs to be visited every day. And so I think we have a lot of windshield time going and checking a lot of things that don't necessarily need to be checked. And so trying to, you know, get eyes and ears on all of our parks and have that quality control is huge. Just we got to tighten the reins down. So we don't have any we don't have extra money, extra time, extra space. It's pretty tight. So nose the grindstone, I guess.
Well, such is life in a general sense. Well, I want to thank everyone on the panel today for taking the time to chat with us and share their experience. I also want to thank everyone that is participating today. Thank you for your interest and thank you for your continued support for the Institute. I put the Institute's website there as well as my email address. Please reach out to me. Let's chat, share some ideas with me. Share questions that you have or challenges you may be experiencing, and let me know how I can pull together the resources that you need and try to keep them all in one place. I want to say as a closing, thank you for Toro, who is our sponsor, as well as their distributors here in Pennsylvania. They help us greatly to stay afloat and to make sure that we are putting out useful information for the benefit of all of our communities. So without further ado, thank you, everyone. I look forward to hosting you again soon.
See you later.
Take care. Stay warm.